After 6 Israeli captives in Gaza were executed at point-blank range by Hamas terrorists as IDF soldiers were closing in to rescue them, some people in Israel expressed how the atmosphere in the streets felt like October 7th, while the resulting feeling of rage by protesters in the streets directed at Netanyahu and the government, instead of being directed at Hamas, reminded people of the atmosphere of division in the streets on October 6th, 2023. I commented at the time that neither day was like October 7th or October 6th, but that we are in a much better situation today as a society. That surprised some, and people asked for an explanation. So here it is. We are navigating through a profound moment of pain and change and trauma. But despite the immense sadness and the attempts by some in our society to sow division amongst us, the reality today is markedly different and more promising than in the days just before and after October 7th, 2023. The tragic events of October 7th have indeed shattered us, but they have also awakened many of us to a crucial understanding that too many Jews and Israelis have ignored for decades, that we are up against a genocidal enemy called the Palestinian national identity. This realization has clarified for many that there is no distinction between combatants in Gaza and non-combatants in Gaza, as they both took part in the October 7th massacre with rapings and kidnappings and holding our captives in Gaza, and that there is no difference between those Arab Muslims in Gaza and those in Palestinian Authority-controlled areas in Judea and Samaria when it comes to the threat that they pose. This clarity is a significant shift from the pre-October 7th period when divisive rhetoric and political maneuvering obscured the true nature of the existential threats facing us from an entity, the Palestinian national identity, that too many people were told to think of as a pragmatic peace partner or we have to live to deal with next to us. On October 6, 2023, Israel was mired in division, with a small elite pushing protests against judicial reform. This was not merely a debate about the judiciary. It was a struggle over political power. The protests at the time were manipulated to maintain the power of a select few leftist ideologues over the democratically elected government of Israel. The divide was clear, with those protesting the judicial reforms often portraying themselves as the protectors of democracy, while others saw them as undermining democracy and the necessary changes needed to strengthen Israeli democracy. In contrast, today's Israel is awakening to the reality of the threats we face and the necessary steps we need to confront them. The trauma of October 7th, 2023 has led many to see the dangers of the terrorism in the name of the Palestinian national movement more clearly, transcending previous political and ideological divides. The collective consciousness is shifting towards a more unified stance on security and defense, and there is a growing recognition of the need to address the existential threats we face more effectively, and not trying to cover them up by the ideological battles. Looking back, the period following the Yom Kippur War in 1973 was marked by a dangerous naivete exemplified by the Oslo Accords in 1993, which whitewashed arch-terrorist Yasser Arafat and his PLO terrorists. This era saw a tragic miscalculation by leaders who, blinded by their vision of peace, ceded our land and gave guns and power to those, Arafat and the terrorists, who would only use them to further terrorize us and kill Jews. The leftist media and judiciary of the time stifled dissenting voices, labeling critics like me at the time as enemies of peace and suppressing legitimate concerns about the dangers posed by those concessions. Then in the early 2000s, we were presented with another grim chapter with the Gaza disengagement that I call the expulsion, where 10,000 Jews were expelled from their homes and 21 Jewish communities were destroyed in the Gaza Strip. Again, dissenting voices were marginalized by the media and the right-wing perspective was effectively silenced. The establishment media's one-sided narrative contributed to a dangerous misapprehension of the disengagement's impact, which only led to increased terror and instability for the Jewish people in the state of Israel. Fast forward to today. and there is a noticeable shift. Although the political left still holds considerable sway in most establishment and government, media, and institutional sectors, there is now a more robust presence of right-wing and religious voices in the media landscape with our own media operations. This shift is crucial as it provides a more balanced perspective on the issues facing Israel to the Israeli public. Since October 7th, there is a growing recognition of how the justice system has been manipulated to prioritize the rights of terrorists, of Hamas terrorists who took part in massacring us, over the security of law-abiding Israeli citizens and our right to life. The right-wing media outlets have played a significant role in exposing these issues, and many who once protested against judicial reforms have now been reevaluating their positions and admitting their mistakes in participating in those anti-judicial reform protests. Never before has the political, ideologically motivated injustices of the justice system received airtime for the public to know about them, like is happening today. As I spoke about in my Pulse of Israel programs back then during the protest movement, the anti-judicial reform protests of October 6th were not really about the judicial system and the reform. They were part of a broader struggle against the democratization of Israeli society, which includes the growing population of religious and right-wing Jews in Israel. The protests at the time underscored a deeper agenda to maintain the dominance of the ideological left's political and ideological power over Israeli government policymaking in squashing the growing influence of the religious right-wing public, despite the basic rules of democracy and a democratic political system that gave the religious right-wing the power to make changes because they gained that power politically through elections. Many people might no longer remember, but the October 6th protests were not just against the judicial reform. They were also protests against the right of Jews in Israel to celebrate the Jewish holidays of Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and Simchat Torah in the public sphere. So much hatred was spread by the media and the justice system in forbidding Jews in Israel from having Jewish service in the public square. Many were outraged by this outright hypocrisy, as the municipality of Tel Aviv allows Muslims to pray in public with segregated areas in the Charles Clore Park every year in Tel Aviv, yet the municipality of Tel Aviv and the courts forbid Jews that same right in that same city, as they are doing again today for the upcoming holidays. After the announcement of the execution of the 6 Israeli captives in Gaza, blaming their deaths on Netanyahu and the religious right-wing government he leads, saying that they don't care about their lives and they want them to die, despite the attempts to reignite division in society today, where the resurgence of public protests in the name of saving the remaining captives in Gaza, there is a significant shift away from the previous pre-October 7th leftist dominance in the atmosphere. The recent failed strike attempts by Israel's Histadrut labor union on September 2nd is a powerful sign of the growing rejection of the political left's influence in Israel and signifies a positive sign of change. Even with the failed strike attempt, the justice system also exposed its political agenda to the public. Labor strikes are only allowed if they are regarding workers' rights, right? Labor union, labor strike for the laborers. This strike on September 2nd was totally political, anti-government, and it was easily deemed political even by the courts. However, the legal system dragged out dealing with the petitions to get to the courts to end the illegal strike, and even when the court finally heard the petition and deemed the strike illegal, it did not order the labor union to end the strike immediately, or punish the labor union bosses for calling for the illegal strike. No, the judges just ruled that the labor union boss had to end the illegal strike earlier than planned, because it was planned to last for days. With each day, more of the Israeli public are waking up to the ideological agenda, to the unjust abuse of the justice system, and together with the establishment media. More people are becoming increasingly aware of the dangers of leftist political manipulation via the courts and the establishment media. Even more importantly, since October 7th, more people are internalizing the necessity for robust security measures to protect Israeli citizens, measures that the justice system and the established media have systematically tried to stop for decades. More and more Israelis are stopping to watch the demoralizing television channels and radio channels of 11, 12, 13, and the government radio run by the ideological left, and instead are turning to the growing, more patriotic and proudly Jewish Channel 14 on TV and radio stations in order to receive a much better understanding of the reality of the war, the captive deals, and the overall news cycle, including the justice system. The establishment media in Israel are growing crazy. They're going crazy, literally calling Channel 14 poison and fake news because they no longer control the narrative as they have since Israel's establishment. I want to put this evolution of Israeli society into perspective. I always talk to you about the physical existence of the state of Israel. Is it itself a miracle? We have survived decades of wars and terrorism, despite being surrounded in an area in the Middle East by an enemy population in the buildings. In the billions! Billions of Muslims, less than 10 million Jews here. On a whole other level, the strengthening of the Jewish character of the state of Israel is also a miracle. How we have overcome the efforts of a predominantly socialist, secular, labor Zionist movement that founded the state of Israel, that tried to minimize the Jewish character of the state of Israel, believing they would always be a majority since religion belonged to the past. It's God. Whatever religious Jews exist, they're all going to go away. They're a tiny minority. Both of these miracles are a testament to the resilience of the Jewish people connected to our ancestral identity. The recent changes in Israeli society reflect a breaking free from the previous ideological constraints of the left and a more genuine engagement with the realities we face. And that is exactly what the divisive protest movement returning to the streets now is all about. As an Israeli leftist influencer named Yosi Melman recently tweeted on X and then deleted, and I'm giving you the English translation, quote, "The protests are not just about the captives or Hamas, rather they are about the future of the character of the country. Will the country Israel be a Western liberal country with democratic modern values, or will it be a country like Iran?" Right? If it's religious influence, then it'll be like Iran. Israel is experiencing a battle of civilizations and internal cultures. That is the whole story. The captives are just the trigger. End quote. That's a mic drop, everyone. A mic drop. That is not me, Avi Abelel, explaining reality. Those are the exact words of a leftist influencer who is inciting divisive protests taking place in the streets today. He let the cat out of the bag for everyone to hear, which is, I guess, is why he was forced to delete it. It is important that people internalize this context as we see and hear about the growing voices and protests of division once more. The pre-October 6th protest movement was not really about the judicial reform, just as the protest movement today is not really about saving the remaining captives, which we all want to do anyway. Thankfully, the Jewish people in the Jewish state of Israel today are not in the same place that we were on October 6th or October 7th. Even though we are still in the middle of a war with lots of losses, and we are still living with the reality of captives in Gaza that we want to save, the wake-up process we are going through as a society is leading us towards a stronger, more unified Jewish people and Jewish state of Israel. Though hard to internalize for many, this wake-up process is positioning the nation of Israel to be in a better position than we have been ever since the state of Israel was established 76 years ago. Better connected to reality and disconnected from the political left's ideological, agenda-driven media and justice system. This renewed awareness and unity will guide us towards overcoming the challenges ahead. We are still experiencing sadness, trauma, captives in Gaza, war, and a powerful but tiny elite trying to divide and destroy us from within. But Jewish society in Israel today is much better positioned to deal with all of these challenges. So my plea to all of you, hold on to your faith in the one above, strengthen your faith in the one above, share these truths, pray, and together we will make the future brighter. Am Yisrael Chai. If you are not yet a subscriber to my Pulse of Israel videos, go to pulseofisrael.com and click to subscribe, because everyone needs to hear the belief-based, politically incorrect truth about Israel, the Jewish people, and the freedom-loving world every day. And that's what you get when you subscribe to the Pulse of Israel. And we are a donor-based operation. We can use your support to be able to support the making of the videos, the editing, and the promotion of them, so more people can see and hear these important messages. And once again, everyone, Am Yisrael Chai. The future is bright. Come here to Israel. This is where the miracle's happening. Be a part of it if you're not here yet. Shalom, and thanks for watching.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.